What's up everybody, Greg here with Lens Pro To Go and Lens Rentals, and in today's video we're going to be taking a deeper look at the Canon EOS R mirrorless camera. We're going to look at a bunch of different things from the exterior, we're going to look at the menus a little bit, and then as well as some pros and cons with this camera over the other DSLR and mirrorless options out there, and I'm going to let you know what I think about this camera at the end of the video. So let's jump right into it, taking a look at the exterior of the EOS R. Starting on the front, you have the new RF lens mount, which goes for their new R line of lenses, and those lenses are quite a bit bigger and heavier than the EF counterpart. For example, the 51.2 and the 24-105 f4, which are the two lenses that I've been playing around with, are both bigger and heavier than the EF versions of those same lenses. Hopefully in the future they're going to get their R line lenses down and really tend to the mirrorless form factor of being small and travel friendly. Right on either side of the lens mount, you also have a stereo mic input, so you can pick up some audio internally. I would still suggest going with an external microphone like a Rode video mic on top, just to get that really good audio, because internally it's still a little bit tinny and echoey sounding. Going to the top of the camera, you have an on-off switch, which is going to allow you to turn the camera on and off, obviously. You have a hot shoe mount on the top, which will allow you to add on that extra microphone or the flash if you're doing photo. And then you have a small LCD screen which has all of the information that you need for shooting, as well as a little bit of menu navigation. If you hit the mode button, that's going to bring up your menus and you can change from photo to video in here, as well as all of the different custom profiles and the program speeds like shutter priority, aperture priority, or full manual mode. That dial also doubles as your aperture adjustment or your shutter adjustment, however you want to set it up. Right next to that, you have a light to turn on and off the LED so you can actually see what you're doing if it's in the dark. You have a lock button to lock all of the functionality of the rest of the buttons, except for the shutter button when you're recording so you don't bump your settings. There's a video start and stop record, which is really great because this allows you to start and stop recording without having to switch modes from photo to video. So if you're doing a lot of hybrid shooting and you're going back and forth, all you have to do is hit that button and it'll switch right into your video record mode. Then you have another dial adjustment, which is defaulted to shutter speed, but you can also set that to aperture or something else if you want to. There's a function button, which again just opens up some more settings that you can change on the back of the camera. And then you have your shutter button for taking photos and starting and stopping video recording. Over on the right side of the camera, you have a single SD card slot, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later on. Flipping around to the opposite side, on the right, you have all of your ports. You have your remote switch in, so if you're triggering it remotely. Below that, you have a mic in and headphone port if you're doing any audio in camera, so you can monitor it and you can also record using a better microphone. Then you have your USB, which is a USB-C, so you're going to be able to charge the camera through that port as well as transfer photos and videos really quickly. And then you also have an HDMI port for sending the video out to an external monitor or recorder. Going around to the back, you're going to be pretty familiar with a lot of the buttons on here if you're familiar with Canon's camera systems. First one is your menu, obviously just opens up your menus. You have your playback, delete, you have a D-pad for navigation, a quick menu and a set button right in the center there, an info to switch through which display you're showing, and then some AF and magnification buttons on the right side. The new things that you have here are a totally flip out screen, which is fully touch capable, which is going to be really great for utilizing that dual pixel autofocus and touch to focus on the back of the camera, as well as swiping through and previewing photos and zooming in and out. Right above a touchscreen is a brand new electronic viewfinder from Canon. You know them with their DSLRs, so they have their optical viewfinders. Well, this is an electronic viewfinder, so you get correct exposure through that, as well as being able to see a lot of the video tools that they've put into this camera. Right next to the viewfinder is the newest thing that they've added to the back of this camera, and that is the touch bar. This thing has a ton of customizability, and there's actually 3 buttons in one. So first, it's a touch bar, so you can slide back and forth, but then you can also touch on either side of it to jump to a specific setting. I've personally set it up to be my Kelvin white balance so I can adjust for video whether I'm going indoors or outdoors and be able to slide through that really quickly without having to dive into any menus. And that's what I've seen a lot of people use it for, but you can really customize it to whatever you want it to be, whatever works into your workflow. So that's basically all of the exterior, all the new things on the EOS R. Jumping into the menus a little bit, there's really not much change from all of the other Canon cameras out there, the 5Ds, the 6Ds, even the Rebel series. The menu system is very much the same, and it's very easy to navigate and get through and get your camera set up how you want to shoot it. So I'll just show you some stuff on screen of the menus, but really it's no different than any other Canon camera out there. Next up, let's take a look at some of the cons that I've found while using this camera. Now, the first one is that the buttons feel very plasticky and cheap. Now, this is on the lower end and it's not supposed to be a 5D replacement where it's got all of the durability, but the buttons are just a little bit soft and you don't really feel that confirmation of having like a click and a really tactile button. So that's one of the things that I didn't really like about it. The other thing is that there is no joystick on the back anymore. That has been replaced with this touch bar. I really like that joystick for being able to do some navigation and moving focus points around, which they've been able to sort of fix with adding in their new touch to focus on the back of the screen, where you can look through the viewfinder and then if you just use your finger on the back of the screen, you can adjust your AF point. But I really like having that joystick just for general navigation. The other thing with a lot of other mirrorlesses is that there's in-body image stabilization. Now, Canon has done something where they've done some software stabilization, which I'm going to look at a little bit later on, and I'm going to talk about that in the pros, but there's no in-body stabilization, so you have to use this new software-based mode, which I'll talk about later. As far as frame rates, in 4K you can get up to 30 frames a second, and in 1080 you can get all the way up to 60 frames a second, which is very similar to like the 5D Mark IV. And then you also do have the option of 120 frames a second, but you have to go down to 720p, which is the lowest resolution high definition image that you can get. Now I'm going to throw some images on screen right now, shot in that 720p and then scaled up to this 4K video, and you'll see how the quality actually compares versus the 1080-60 or the 4K. When you switch into this 120 frames a second high frame rate mode, you do lose some functionality, that being the autofocus, you don't get any, and you also can't use the software stabilization that this camera has. So I'm sure as I use this camera, there's going to be some more things that stand out to me, but for now, that is it. Switching over to the pros, there's a lot I like about this camera. The first one being the fully articulating screen. This makes it so I don't have to have an external monitor if I'm trying to record myself like I am now with the 1DX. And it's also fully touch enabled, so you can use it for that dual pixel autofocus, and you can actually drag your focus point to do rack focuses during video, which is pretty awesome. Like I just mentioned, this camera does have the dual pixel autofocus, which is taken from some of their higher end cameras like the 1DX and the C300, C200. It's really fantastic with 5,655 hybrid autofocus points, and because it's a mirrorless camera, those go all the way to the edge of the frame, which is absolutely fantastic for doing any sort of tracking. You're not going to lose them if they get too close to the edge or sort of out of the center area like you would with some of the other cameras. Along with the dual pixel autofocus, there's also some really nice video tools in this camera, especially to help with focus, which is peaking, and their focus guide, which really lets you know where you are and when you're in focus. Especially using a smaller screen, it's really nice to have those kinds of tools. You also get to see full exposure simulation, so when you're looking through the EVF or on the live screen on the back, you're going to be able to see exactly what the image is going to look like before you take the photo. This is going to save a lot of trial and error and setting adjustments because you're going to be able to see it right before you actually take the shot. As far as the body, it has a really nice deep grip, so you have a good handhold on it. The body feels really durable. It's just those buttons that feel a little bit cheap. It's also incredibly light, coming in under 1.5 pounds with the battery and memory card in it. So you're going to be able to travel a lot with this and be able to put it in your bag and not really worry about adding too much weight. Canon has also done some really nice things for people who are going to stick with their older EF lenses, and they've added an adapter ring, which gets you that smart functionality of some of the newer lenses to give you some more setting controls, but use your older glass that you've already purchased. So internally, you can record in a C-Log, which is a flat profile, to allow you to get some really nice dynamic range in your shots and do a lot more color grading in post, rather than the standard image coming right out of camera. And you also get a 10-bit out through the HDMI if you wanted to send it to an external recorder, like an Atomos Ninja 5 or something like that. Going back to that software stabilization in camera that I talked about, this works with any lens, so your lens does not have to have image stabilization. And what it does is basically crop in on the image a little bit and add in some stabilization to the footage. So this basically does what a warp stabilizer would do, but much better, because it's not actually trying to interpret the footage. It can actually be in there and understand how the camera is moving. And then there's two modes in this digital IS, where there's enabled, which is just turning it on. It gets you a little bit of a crop on your image, and then the enhanced, which crops in even more on your image, but it gets you some really, really stable footage if you're trying to do some handheld work. And then the last thing, which is a huge pro for me, and it's actually a really cool feature of this camera, is that there's Wi-Fi built in, and it allows you to automatically send photos from the camera to your phone. So you don't have to keep opening the app and reconnecting. You can just shoot away and then go back to your phone, and all of it will be there, ready for you to view and start editing. So going back to some of the things that are a little more preference and not really a pro or a con in my eyes, the first one being the one card slot. yes, it's kind of a bummer, and if you're a wedding shooter, it probably is definitely a con, but for most of the time, I'm only shooting to one SD card anyway for all of the videos and photos that I do, so one card slot is not going to be a deal breaker for me. And then the next thing is the slider bar on the back and not having a joystick anymore. I'm so used to having a joystick because I shoot on the 1DX Mark II and the 5D Mark IV quite a bit. So trying to get used to this new slider is a little bit difficult, but I think it will come in time. And there's definitely more customizability and functionality with that. So that one's sort of up in the air. And then the last thing is the EVF and the electronic EVF. Unlike an optical viewfinder, you're not seeing exactly what you're seeing in real life. So there is a little bit of a delay and a little bit of lag when you're kind of framing around and looking around through the EVF. So that's something you kind of have to get used to. The trade-off of having the electronic EVF though, is that you actually get to see exactly what your photo or video is going to look like before you start recording or take that shot. So to sort of wrap all of this up, I definitely think the Canon EOS R is a fantastic camera for people who are trying to get into that hybrid shooting of doing photos and videos, especially if you want to shoot yourself and do some vlogging with the flip out screen. That's definitely a must, as well as the backwards compatibility of being able to use your older lenses if you already have EF lenses. Now, I don't think it's quite there yet for the pro shooters just because of the single card slot if you're a wedding photographer, and then just having a little bit less functionality. With their next version, hopefully that will have a lot of the features like the 120 frames a second in full HD, the dual card slots, as well as just some better recording options internally instead of the 8-bit that you can record in now. But I am super excited to continue using this camera, and I might actually switch over my videos from using the 1DX Mark II to this camera if I get a little more hands-on with it and make sure that it really works for what I'm doing. Let me know what you guys think about the Canon EOS R in the comments below. Are you going to switch to it? Are you going to pick one up? And if you want to try one out before you go and spend the big bucks, there's going to be links in the description below to try it out. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. If you guys enjoy this video and you want to see more, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for new videos every single week, and I'll see you in the next one.